process, revolts against it, solidarity among different workers across the skill divide, and the reception of different political programs by different workers. So that was really the main source, and I spent a lot of time in the archives in Lyon, France, and I have many, many boxes still full of the photocopies I made of those documents. At this point, I thought I would try to lay out some of my argument in a general way, and then pass to maybe a few words about the 1936 upsurge, and then maybe conclude with something related to how they might relate to the current struggles in France. Well, my basic argument really is grounded in the material relations surrounding work. That Marxist tradition is the way we basically approach the question of class consciousness, political identity, its production, and its reproduction. My basic argument looks like this. In France, in the late 19th and through much of the 20th century, and to an extent even today, there are at least two main political identities. There are sets of strategies, ideologies, and organizations on offer for workers. The first we could call a reformist identity, involving a focus on electoral reforms, alliances with middle class political parties, then also a very positive attitude towards the nation. This goes back to a tradition in France from the French Revolution that's referred to as the Jacobin tradition, in which French workers saw themselves as an integral part of the nation. On the other hand, another political identity, and this first one, by the way, was represented historically by various socialist groups, including the large Unified Socialist Party that was created in 1905 out of a unification of several smaller ones. So French workers also had the option of being associated with another type of political identity. And this political identity can be called a revolutionary identity based on class independence. It was promoted initially by anarchists, by revolutionary syndicalists, and later by the Communist Party. And this was quite different. The idea here was that instead of electoral action, workers should fight for their interest at the point of production, in factories, in mines, in mills, in shops. They should avoid and reject alliances with middle-class politicians. They should work towards a great general strike, which will lead to the abolition of the wage system, the capitalist system. And so they also had very different attitudes about class and nation. They felt that the nation was basically a bourgeois construct, and that identification with nationalism, with patriotism, would be a way of underwriting class solidarity. So to the nationalism promoted by middle-class forces and some of the reformist socialist forces, the revolutionary class autonomous set of ideas, strategies, and organizational practices post-proletarian internationalism across borders, across trades, across skills, and the like. So these were the different types of political identities on offer to France, in France. As it happened, my silk workers, and this is another reason I chose them, my silk workers have a long tradition of association with the reformist position and the whole identity, including class and nation, that was associated with. Metal workers were a mainstay of the class independence revolutionary current and tradition. And when the Communist Party was founded, they had an extremely important role in that organization. In fact, it's the early Communist Party in France has been referred to as a party of metal workers. So these are the political identities. How were they formed? Well, what I argue is that the identities were formed out of the intersection of two large sets of structures. The first I call political structures, or as academics, political scientists, and other social movement theorists call political opportunity structure. And political opportunity structure basically means the possibilities for winning reforms, the possibilities of conducting different types of political action, depending on the general political climate, which opens the avenue for some forms of collective action in politics, politics and close off the avenue for others. So those are my political opportunity structures, and it's really a matter of national politics, of local politics, of the availability of political platforms and programs. On the other hand, there are industrial social relations, and industrial social relations are the links linking workers with other workers across the skill divide, across occupational and industrial categories. It also involves the relations linking workers to the labor process in terms of control over the labor process and work. And it also is about the links between employers and workers. In sum, it's about the balance of forces between capital and labor on a shop floor basis. So the industrial social relations can involve very large structures of national policy and industrial development, as well as the actual rhythm of work in a factory. And combined, all of them in conjunction with political opportunity structure shapes political identities. Let me just give one example of what is a larger argument. The metal workers, as we've seen, were part of a political current and acquired a political identity that was connected to shop floor struggles. Well, as highly skilled workers working in large, highly capitalized factories, where strikes could be quite damaging to the employers and quite effective in bringing workers' attentions to the fore, those type of strategies were naturally used by workers. As they were a big part of the class struggle political autonomy current, that identity was something that was very attractive to my metal workers. Silk workers, on the other hand, had weak shop floor strength. In fact, the Canoe in the earlier period didn't even own their own, they owned their own tools, so a strike didn't necessarily mean an assault on capitalist property. It was on capitalist production, but the silk workers felt, rightly so probably, that struggle on the political plane was a more efficacious way to bring about progressive social change for them. So this is just kind of a sliver of way I look at the relationship between political programs, political identities in general, how they're formed through the combination of political opportunity structure and industrial social relation, giving us distinct political identities connected with various occupational groups. All right, so that's really kind of the largest level, the most elaborate one. I want to say a few things about one of the more dramatic periods that's taken up in the book, and that is the Popular Front of the mid-1930s. This was a period when many of the social gains that are today under attack were registered, and they were ones of great political mobilizations. I thought I would read just a little from the book to talk about the origins, nationally and internationally, of the Popular Front. The Popular Front arose in the tense international scene of the early 1930s. In Europe, fascist regimes had come to power in Italy in 1922 and Germany in 1933. To the east, Japan had invaded Manchuria in 1931, setting the stage for a full-scale invasion of China in 1937. The French political scene was highly polarized. In the 1930s, monarchist groups like Action Française, right-wing veterans groups like the Croix de Feu of Colonel de la Roque, the more directly fascist Parti Populaire Français, and the Parti Social Français of renegade communist leader Jacques Doriot organized noisy and sometimes violent street demonstrations against Republican institutions, officials, and left-wing political groups. For years, these reactionary groups attacked the Republic as a corrupt institution responsible for France's social problems and loss of status internationally. In January 1934, a well-known professional swindler named Alexander Stavisky came to the center of attention as a widespread fraudulent scheme publicly unraveled. When Stavisky was found dead by police, supposedly by suicide after several days on the run as a fugitive, the right-wing press seized on the large number of government officials who had been either protected, collaborated with, or had somehow been involved with Stavisky to whip up anti-Republican sentiment. On February 6th, a right-wing demonstration organized